Crowning Soul, Chapter 1, Uninvited Guest, Preview. Nezha's gaze pierced through the crowd, the people and their conversations, 1,000 winds caught in a gale. Nezha! Her Aunt Lamis always called her that. A name meaning a promenade, as if Nezha were destined to leave Azam Morocco on a path far greater and never miss the way. A place filled with flowers and sweets would be ideal to Nezha Zaman. Kidaira? I'm okay. Nezha tilted her head down with a reassuring smile. But her smile was a weapon, a tool, a bandage, spreading across her face with versatility. She could hardly breathe, but being around Aunt Lamis, with her warm smile and fun nature, made it more tolerable. The crowd's getting bigger. Those prizes would bring anyone in, even in the world of the Gayab, Lamis said as she winked and passed Nezha with a pot of yellow flowers in her hands. Unseen or not, Nezha wanted to make it through the day without having to force herself to breathe. She'd make it. She would. She always did. A floral blend of roses and smoke filled Nezha's head as Lamis crossed to the front table. The scent had become a sense of comfort. It was Lamis's scent. Whenever Lamis was present, her cheery nature never failed to ease Nezha's tense body if the crowds grew or she had to force herself to breathe. After a chocolate, she'd make it for sure. Nezha scooped her hand into a glass bowl. She unwrapped the red packaging of one of her childhood favorites, Merendina, a sponge cake sandwiched between chocolate ganache and coated in dark chocolate. Soft, sweet, and so good. Okay, back to work again. Nezha's heart hammered as she interacted with the people. Brothers and husbands made up most of the crowd. So many flowers passed through her fingers, she was sure they would soon sell out. Lamis handed a bouquet of red, pink, and yellow flowers to a customer and bounced over to a watering can. Could you get one of the lilies from outside? Lamis's animation reminded Nezha of the white-winged wasp-eater, birds that roosted over the ancient ruins in the east. Yeah, just don't overwater the lilies, Lamis. I wouldn't want the leaves browned by tip burn. Nezha headed for the door. Lamis chuckled behind her. Nezha's family owned the flower shop, Rhoda's Flowers. The anniversary and the 40% discount attracted the crowds. Her father had left in the early morning to take their inventory to a botanical garden, where they would hold the party. Her family was well known to the neighborhood. At their shop, the fragrances of sugar, chocolate, and spice would lift her lips into a smile and hush any intruding thought before it stole her peace. Nezha stepped out to the display in front of the shop, where rows of rich-toned pots of browns and oranges topped with flowers. Atop one, a bumblebee sat, its legs decorated with fuzzy yellow balls of pollen. She watched as it hovered around another flower, and then took to the sky. There, something caught her eye. Her eyebrows raised at the way the darkness rolled, alive and breathing. Nezha's eyes fixed to the morning sky, where smoke whispered through the trees. Billowing in the wind like a satin dress, the smoke took the form of a dark figure among the branches. Nezha's eyes narrowed. What is that? Could the branches or the sun's glare be obscuring her sight? She grabbed the pot and darted into the shop. Just a shadow. Just in time, Nezha! Lamis reached for the pot. Nezha handed it to her and swiftly turned to go behind their front desk. She couldn't waste time thinking about that shadow, even if it was undulated in the breeze, like a living thing. A customer walked up to Nezha. Do you have another fireweed plant? Nezha parted her lips. She handed the customer a flyer with a picture of the fireweed plant and its location. Excuse me, she said, then rushed for Lamis and tapped her shoulder. She heard a shukram from the customer as she moved to the back of the shop. Lamis took over. How may I help you? She'd just take a minute. She couldn't leave her aunt out there alone. But Nezha needed a moment just to breathe. Whatever that thing was, She couldn't let the thought stop her from working. It must have been her eyes tricking her. She had been diligent all day, so it had to be the exhaustion making her see things. Nessa turned to one of the flowers, the Rose of Venezuela, and cupped her hands around its crimson, tubular petals. It had been watered earlier, and still held drops that made it appear like plump fruit. Nessa held her face close and breathed it in. Although they didn't have a scent, it quelled the bubble of anxiety in her chest. Somehow, it relaxed her tense shoulders. Warmth flooded her chest and the very tips of her fingers. A curl of fire grew in her palm. Nessa breathed out. She couldn't let the fire run free. Not when crowds of people were right outside the room. She inhaled and pressed her face to the petals, and watched as a small flame flickered and vanished. When she was a child, she had carried boxes of blooming flowers to their shop and sunk her fingers into the coolness of the soil. Every plant taught her how to withstand and make her path, through the chill of fear or the burning of anger, damp days filled with tears, or dry days of a barren mind. They taught her never to give up, that even in the most inhospitable land, life found a way to fight its way in. Nessa, what happened? Lamis appeared behind her. I just needed to breathe for a moment. I'm okay now. Nessa gave Lamis's arm a gentle squeeze, and her aunt returned it. That's my Nessa, determined and capable. Lamis's eyes held concern, even though she smiled. It's my birthday tomorrow, so I should be getting wiser, Nessa said with a grin. My Nessa is truly a young woman now. Lamis looked at Nessa with unfocused eyes, as if she were lost in the thoughts of Nessa when she was a child. She shook her head. Let's work. Nessa readjusted her apron. Yeah. End of preview.